Hailing from the Jersey Shore and raised as athletes, the Airey Bros have always shared a passion for physical culture, athletic performance, and human optimization, always striving to be the strongest versions of themselves, mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. Along the way, they've met some pretty amazing humans and have had some pretty epic adventures. The intention of Airey Bros Radio is to showcase these amazing people and the impact that they've had on them, and to share tips, tricks, and hacks so that you can win each day, every day.
You're listening to Airey Bros Radio. Be there or be square, because it's all killer, no filler.
Instead of fighting wars to gain our freedom, we simply have to grow food to gain our freedom. Action taken out of fear is going to lead to destruction. Action taken out of the joy of connection with source is going to lead to beautiful things. And then you nourish it by demonstrating what's possible. And that's my whole life. That's what my whole life is, strategically, intentionally, and joyfully positioning to be that demonstrator to add to the other thousands of demonstrators out there. If you can conceive it and believe it, you can achieve it. It's easier than a lawn, and it provides food for generations to come. And every emotion has a coinciding vibration. What did Tesla say? If you want to change the world more in 10 years, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration, something like that. So I built this fruit tree nursery, and we started with this vision of having a golf course where there is food growing everywhere. And what comes first, the food forest or the raised vibration? They go hand in hand. Hey, Rich. Well, thank you. I'm honored to be on your show, and I can't wait to share what I've learned over the decades with as many people as possible.
Yeah, we're stoked to have you on and have a conversation with you. Big fan of Greg Carwood and the Higher Side Chats is where I was first introduced. And then, we've had Del Bigtree on as well. So we checked you out there. And then we are also sons of a landscaper. So nice. when you talk about, 40 million acres of lawn in the United States and how we're kind of just leaving money on the table, so to speak, in terms of, we live here in Denver, so we do see some people that are taking advantage of their front yards and turning them into edible gardens and stuff like that. And that's, when we walk around the city, we have these conversations like, imagine if people could just walk around their neighborhoods and pick an apple off of a tree, like how quickly we could get rid of world hunger and these sorts of things. And so we're just stoked to have you on and talk about what you got going on, some of your ventures and all that good stuff. And we were both former wrestlers as well too. So,
nice. I got the cauliflower here right there. That's my only tattoo is right there.
Yeah. Badge of honor.
Yep. Love it.
And that was the thing, Jim, because Rich had been talking about the American Lawn Conspiracy to me, and my buddy Eric had been talking to me about it probably past 2 months, really been prevalent, really been seeing it in the neighborhoods. Wow, we could put food here. And then I heard you, and then, I did a Google search and I saw you were in the USA Wrestling Hall of Fame. I was like, oh, this is our guy. Like, this is our wheelhouse. So what started you on this path of kind of this alternative living and helping people realize, hey, you can save a lot of money and help a lot of people if you grow your own plants instead of doing, having a front lawn?
So it started with, I've always been a nature lover, and I love the outdoors. After I sold the mortgage company and lived around the world, I found Costa Rica. And when I got to Costa Rica, I started buying thousands of acres of jungle, mostly unusable land. Like you can't use the jungle for construction, but I just loved walking in the jungle. And then, so while I was there, the first piece I bought actually was a lot. I sold it. It was 2006-07. I bought a lot. I sold it like 6 months later for 30-40% more. And I'm like, this is just crazy. It was like the mad rush of real estate in Costa Rica, all over the world. And I was looking at it from, okay, how can I live here, enjoy this lifestyle, and make money trading real estate? So I started developing, and I hadn't been a developer before. So I got into it little by little. And then within about a year, I had purchased a cattle pasture. It was about 300 and some acre cattle pasture, mostly flat ground with some little hills in it, a little river running through it. And it was a biological desert. It was really just a few trees, a little stream, and mostly not much life there. And so I started, my first vision was I'm going to build a fruit tree nursery because the fruits in Costa Rica just blew my mind. There's so many fruits that I had never heard of growing up in Minnesota. And so I'm like, I want these everywhere. So I built this fruit tree nursery, and we started with this vision of having a golf course where there's food growing everywhere because I loved golf. And what happened from that is I attracted a lot of attention from the local environmentalists who I heard rumors about how they hated me, right? Because I was a developer. They hate developers. And I didn't understand that. I'm like, why are you hating on me? I'm doing something good. I'm improving the quality of the land, actually. And so I invited them into my office. And I've always known, or at least for the last 20 some years, that haters are the best consultants because they don't hold anything back. They're not going to sugarcoat it. They're going to tell you exactly how they feel. It's just our discernment to weed through the hate and find out where are the nuggets of truth, right? So I invited them into my office, which surprised the shit out of them, right? They're like, oh my God. So they come in, and they came in pissed off. You know, they just had this air of anger about them, which is about half the world right now, maybe more than half. So I said, first of all, my goal, I'm an environmentalist too. I don't really know a lot of details that you're talking about, but I want to do good for the planet and for our society. And so I started sharing my vision. They just kept shaking their heads. They said, it's not permaculture. It's not I'm like, what the hell is permaculture? Like, I don't, you keep talking about that. And then they couldn't explain it very well, at least not well enough to weed through their hatred and understand what they're talking about. So after they left, I wiped off the blood and the tears, and I got online and permaculture, right? And I think the first video I saw was Bill Mollison. It was 2 hours into it. I knew the rest of my life was going to be dedicated to permaculture. And at the same time, it was 2008-9, the economy was crashing. The development was going to hell. Everybody in real estate in Costa Rica at that time, all the land values went down. Well, there was literally no sales. Like the local Coldwell banker, they used to have like 20 sales a month. They had one sale in 6 months. After that, like it just completely shut down real estate. So then my question to myself was, okay, now that I understand there's a problem with everything, and I also at that same time watched Zeitgeist. We were at a little bar in Costa Rica, and these guys were saying how 9/11 was an inside job. And I said, you're fucking crazy. I said, there's no way it could be an inside job. It would take too many people, right? It's just impossible. I didn't understand compartmentalization at the time. I didn't understand cognitive dissonance. I didn't really understand anything. In fact, when Obama first got elected, I had tears of joy because I wanted this Nobel Peace Prize winner to create peace and not level cities like he did right after he won the Nobel Peace Prize. Anyway, so I went down all the rabbit holes at once, and I had my first 2 daughters at the time, and I have a strong belief after reading Napoleon Hill's like Think and Grow Rich and Ziegler and Rohn and Dennis Waitley and all these greats, if you can conceive it and believe it, you can achieve it. And so I started saying, well, how can I affect this and really become a catalyst for change, for massive change, to inspire people? So after I went down that 2 years of rabbit hole cognitive dissonance, I read Bill Mollison's quote, though the problems of our world are increasingly complex, the solutions remain embarrassingly simple. And I started bawling. And from that point on, I have been working to the solution. So the golf course community was done. So I started building a community in the middle of the jungle called Osa Mountain Village. And the first thing we did was plant fruit trees and berry bushes and all the stuff everywhere we could. Thousands and thousands of fruit trees. We had goats and chickens and tilapia and pigs and So many ducks and eggs, like 80 eggs a day were coming to our community. Every community member got 2 baskets of food a day. A week. Plus, I could go out for 10 minutes and have a basket full of food anytime I wanted. And it was, relatively speaking, no effort compared to the effort of going to the store and making money to go to the store. And so it went from there, and it just exploded. And the lessons I learned for the next 5 or 6 years led me to where I am now, which is the simple, basic understanding that if we use the soil and we use our lawns and we combine permaculture, very simple techniques, we can literally reverse mass extinction and deforestation and cancer and diabetes and heart disease. We can reverse all of the forms of tyranny, from government, from ignorance, from all of it, within 10 years. And that's what we're going to do.
Love it. You know, it's interesting talking about changing up your front lawn, and the greatest problems can be changed with the simplest things. And, you know, we're athletes, and coaches always talk about it's about doing the simple things well. Has this concept, is it being well received? Is, you know, because I feel like this is a no-brainer to me. Like I would rather have apple trees and peach trees and berry bushes than having to take a lawnmower out and cutting the lawn and then, you know, blowing off all the sidewalks and all that stuff. I would just rather like to see like fruits and vegetables everywhere, and even have signs in my front yard is like, you know, take what you need, help yourself, you know, because when everybody does better, everybody does better.
Exactly. And if I've got a food forest and none of my neighbors have a food forest and the food supply chain collapses, I better have a lot of guns. I don't want to be shooting my neighbors. Like, that's just insanity. So my job is to inspire. And Victor Hugo had another quote that just stopped me in my tracks. This one's an emotional one. There's one thing more powerful than all of the armies of the world, and that is an idea whose time has come. And I stopped and I sat with that for really now a few years. And I said, okay, if it's an embarrassingly simple thing, as Bill Mollison said, or if an idea can be more powerful than all the armies of the world, and how relevant is that right now? Then I have to do everything in my power to find the embarrassingly simple solution, to advocate this idea, and then to inspire it and to scale it, right? And little backstory, I started a mortgage company after traveling around the world. I got back and I had bartending experience with a teaching degree. And I told my roommates, because I took about a year sabbatical, just traveling and reading books by the greats. And when I got back, I had this insane illusion that I could have $3 million in 3 years starting dead broke. And my 2 roommates, Rob and Pete, they were engineers, very logical minded guys. And they said, they actually, we were drinking beers before going out one day, and they were laughing at me, literally sarcastically, hardcore, telling me I was stupid. And they literally said, that's not how it works. 3 years later, we did $1.3 billion in sales and had 480 loan officers in 10 states, right? And it was an idea that changed the model. And so the demonstrations are everywhere. I mean, there's permaculturalists all over the world in every zone that have proven how easy it is to live this way. You know, people say, how hard is it to have a food forest? Well, how hard is it to have a forest that's your favorite forest, right? How much maintenance do you give that forest? None. You let it be. So when you design, to your question, how simple it is, it's easier than a lawn, and it provides food for generations to come. In fact, there's an olive tree on the Greek Isle of Crete that was planted over 2,000 years ago that's still producing olives today. Like, that's magic. That's like divine wisdom at its finest. So my learnings, and I have a thick head. Sometimes I get in my thought and it takes me a little bit to get out of it. My learning was, I developed these fancy greenhouses and off-grid this and off-grid dehydrators the size of shipping containers, and they're cool designs and they have a function, but that's way too complicated. It's all we got to do is put seeds in the soil in a way that mimics natural processes, follow nature, and then plant the perennials and the nitrogen fixers and the beneficial insect attractors and the food, the layers of food, from the roots and tubers to the herbaceous all the way up to the overstory fruit trees. And when you do that using these permaculture designs that have been proven all over the world, you just let it go.
How do you think we can kind of talk to people about this? Because you look outside, and I would say probably maybe every 20 lawns, you might get one that has some boxes and some fruit and stuff. How do we kind of spread that word and get people out of the competing whose grass is greener? That's where we grew up, right? Who's got the greenest grass on the lawn? How do you get out of that and go to who's got the best garden on the street?
I love that. And that's what's happening in such magical ways right now. I've got movie stars reaching out and movie producers reaching out of famous shows that you've all seen. And they're all coming together and they're saying, this is it. I want to be part of this. So the question, how, is you plant the seed and then you nourish it by demonstrating what's possible. And that's my whole life. That's what my whole life is, strategically, intentionally, and joyfully positioning to be that demonstrator, to add to the other thousands of demonstrators out there, and then to find the best way to encourage and inspire, to encourage, to bring courage, because the world is the slave masters are running a lot of the society through the use of fear and shame and rage and hatred and division, right? Our job is to bring together this idea that to inspirit people, to raise the vibration. And what comes first, the food forest or the raised vibration? They go hand in hand. If you're I spent yesterday, I took some magic mushrooms and a couple puffs of cannabis, and I went and sat on our Galt's Landing, which is a completely off-grid luxury community that we're building. And I just meditated in the jungle in our food forest. And this connection was so profound. There was butterflies going by all over the place. I was no mosquito spray in a Florida woods. I had not one mosquito eat me, land on me. I have no bites. I'm still kind of shocked about that. So I believe that we are just touching the edge of what's possible with our understanding of how we can work with balance, with divine natural systems. And instead of fighting wars to gain our freedom, we simply have to grow food to gain our freedom.
That's pretty profound.
Yeah. Well, and you just went up a couple levels on our book too, once you mentioned the magic mushrooms, because we get down with that as well. We've had quite a few psychedelic researchers on here as well. So we definitely preach the benefits of healing the world through psychedelic experiences. And, we've been down to Costa Rica and Peru for different shamanic journeys and stuff like that. So you continue to speak our language more and more, which is just...
I got the chills, buddy. So ayahuasca, I've had 7 ceremonies with ayahuasca in the jungles in different places. And so why are these things illegal? I mean, the peace pipe, of freaking course they don't want a peace pipe. Of course they don't want us in touch with God-given natural divine energies, because that's the disconnect. It starts with it, and it's been going forever. There have always been parasites at every level of this divine natural system, and they will suck the blood. The wood ticks, the mosquitoes, to the Rothschilds and Rockefellers. They will suck the energy of the people, and it's our awareness and our connection and our balance and our courage and faith that literally win. And in a way, and winning can be thought of as an interesting thing. I'm a competitor, so I like that idea. I don't look at it as somebody loses. I just did the best I can, right? So these things are illegal for the reason is they bring us back to the understanding that we are all part of this amazing system.
Yeah, it's hard to take a bit of psychedelics and be in nature and not feel the connection and notice the subtleties of almost as if like you see the trees are breathing, they're moving, it's like, that's not the wind that's doing that. I'm perceptually I'm seeing something else. And what I was going to say before was that, my biggest thing going on in the last year and a half with everything that has gone on in our world is that I'm still waiting. Luckily, I haven't been holding my breath waiting, but I'm still waiting for one of these health officials or politicians to talk about how we can actually really get healthy and talk about eating vegetables and eating clean sourced products and getting rid of the processed foods and drinking healthy water and getting out in nature, taking your shoes off and grounding and earthing and all these sorts of things. I'm still waiting for it. And that's why I've kind of, not that I had much faith in it to begin with, but I just don't have any faith in that these people have any sort of interest in our best interest at heart. It's just unbelievable to me.
Absolutely. The word monarchy means ruled by one person. The word anarchy means ruled by no one, right? Larkin Rose has one of the most, this will be known as a foundational teaching. And it is the most dangerous superstition. In fact, this one is also good. What anarchy isn't, right? Anarchy is not chaos in the streets. It's not all of a sudden your neighbors want to kill you because there's no ruler, there's no governmente. Like this, the words blow my mind. So you've got govern, which means to manage or control, and mente, which means mind. And they have taken over the television programming, right? And the entertainment, enter, hold, mente. Like if you look at all this stuff, it's right there, and it's not even a conspiracy. It's right in our face. We just have to jump through awareness over that and to overstand all of this in incredible control grid. Like I'm not a fan of governmente at all. In fact, it's the most dangerous superstition that governmente is going to actually do something for me when history has shown that they're responsible through the church as a part of the government. The queen runs the church and the freaking world, right? And to think that they're going to do something for our best interest when we pay them 30-some billion dollars a year just to have their lifestyle, like it's just insanity at this making. But the good news is we're waking up.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned anarchy because I just recently, within the past couple of days, had a conversation with someone, and they said that I was a Republican, and I said, I don't know what you're talking about. I've never bought into the two-party paradigm ever. And then when I said, I'm more into, being an anarchist, and then that just like their mind melted that I would even bring up, like, because that's so many people, when you say anarchy, they just think of like turning on the TV and seeing like what you see in Portland or what you saw in Minnesota and Minneapolis, or even here in Denver. We've got people calling us to check on us to see where we're right. And we're like, well, we're 2 miles away from that. And it's like, there's kids out playing in the street and no one even knows what's going on. So it's just turn your TV off, get a book, do a little research, find out what an anarchist what that really means and what that really entails. And it doesn't mean death and destruction and chaos. It just means no ruler.
Right.
Yeah.
It's such a beautiful thing when we realize, and that's why these things go hand in hand. To raise, it's all about vibration and energy. I think, what did Tesla say? If you want to change the world more in 10 years, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration, or something like that. It's about, and every emotion has a coinciding vibration, right? Shame is like next to death, where you're just like, and that's the people who kill themselves. They're so in shame. And then you get a little angrier, and now you've got more energy, but it's destructive energy. And then it goes up to you get to this level of willingness or of faith or of courage. And then all of a sudden from there, the world opens up and the possibilities and the joy. Joseph Campbell said, follow your bliss, and truer words have never been spoken.
Yeah. You had mentioned, the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds, and we all know about hemp and how that went down. How did lawns become a thing? Do you know? You seem like a pretty well-read guy. How did the lawn conspiracy become a thing?
Yeah. Henry Kissinger said a lot of crazy shit, right? He's one of the ultimate slave masters. He said that, humans are 4 billion useless eaters, or in war, he said they're cannon fodder, put the people on the front lines. To some people who live in this idea of control. Control is a fear-motivated energy system, right? Allowing is a courageous thing, right? So we got to jump from this idea of control. And Henry Kissinger said, if you want to control nations, control oil. If you want to control people, control food. And this strategy has led to a complete dismantling of the family farm. They actually paid a lot of people in California to take out their fruit trees. They subsidized the removal of fruit trees from people's yards, all through government. Here in Florida, they said you can't grow citrus trees, right? Because the monocultures had a citrus bug. So they've tried to find ways now. They're blaming some new disease on chickens and on pigs and all. It's all part of the scam. It's all part of the systematic dismantling of the food supply chain, which is happening rapidly right now.
Yeah, I mean, at some point in time, we hope we all get, I know I'm fed up with it, but I'm kind of tired of rich politicians telling us that we're the problem.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's crazy to the subsidy stuff, and they're literally paying people to destroy crops, and then if you've ever driven cross country and like you've driven through like Kansas or the Midwest, and you're like, man, imagine if all of this corn was hemp, or something that was a little bit more healthier for people, and that, or even if we were just using it for ethanol and making fuel out of it instead, but they're turning it into poison and high fructose corn syrup, and people love walking up and down the middle aisles of the grocery stores and
getting poisoned.
Yeah.
Right? Pure poison, especially with the poisons that are intentionally put in there for the same ultimate goal, which is very well spoken by these people. Depopulation is their goal. They've said it. Most of them have said it publicly on camera, saying we need to depopulate. And so this is a link that a lot of folks haven't made yet. And when I'm talking to some democratic minded people, right? Some people who say, I say something like, this is all part of the agenda or all part of this, that, they go, well, we have to depopulate because otherwise we're going to destroy our world. No, it's not. The freaking population has nothing to do with it. If we simply used our resources wisely, and I don't mean becoming farmers, I mean just simply using our resources in a way that's regenerative and sustainable, like food instead of lawns, then we could have 50 billion people. But on the flip side, and also, there's a book by Greg Mortensen called 3 Cups of Tea. And he goes into Afghanistan and starts building schools for the young ladies in these communities that were previously uneducated and they weren't allowed to be educated. He risked his life, almost died a few times. And he found out, and many other cultures have studied this as well, that once women get educated, they simply have fewer kids. They have a really sustainable amount of kids. Their populations in a lot of the most affluent countries in the world are actually declining, right? So it's about education, and education is a huge part of the regenerative process that we need to really spread to everybody, and not common core bullshit. Like education about how to create sustainability is job one, but they don't want that in schools, so we have to do it ourselves.
And you had mentioned a community that you are growing and building down in Florida. Can you speak on that a little bit?
Absolutely. So the community is called Galt's Landing, after John Galt from Atlas Shrugged. And it's 52 acres on a private 430-acre lake. And there's 10 home sites. And actually, my partner is the main owner. I own lot 8. And we are decking the whole thing out with food forests everywhere. There's going to be way more food than our community can eat. And can you imagine like 50 acres of rows and rows and rows of hundreds of different types of food? The birds, the butterflies, the life, the vibration. And of course, we don't have to go anywhere. Every lot will have its own power and its own water supply as well. So we'll be completely off the grid, but not with an outhouse and a cabin in the woods, literally living in luxury, but off the grid.
Where do I sign up?
Right here.
Where can you say where in Florida it is, or like region?
Yeah, it's near St. Cloud, which is near Orlando, basically.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, about 40 minutes from the international airport.
Okay, we have a family place in Lake Mary,
Oh, beautiful.
so we're kind of familiar with that area. It's funny, it's called St. Cloud. Isn't that a spot in Minnesota too?
That's where I used to party like crazy when I was a kid.
They have a decent wrestling program up there too at the university.
They got decent since, yeah, in the last 10 years or 20 to 15, they've been phenomenal.
Yeah. Wasn't Gene Hanneman, wasn't he a national champ there?
I think so.
I believe he was. I was basically 89 through 93.
Okay.
I think he was after me.
Yeah, he's from our area, back where we're from in New Jersey. So we've known him. He's a police officer for the state police in New Jersey, and he's quite an intense individual.
I hope I'm the good way.
Yeah, yeah, for
Oh,
sure.
yeah.
Oh, good. I
And-
love that.
Kind of speaking about wrestling, and you're someone I am super excited to ask this question, but growing up, you always hear wrestling coaches say, this sport is going to teach you things that's going to stick with you for the rest of your life. What are some lessons that you got from the sport of wrestling that stick with you on a daily basis that you use? Because I know there's certain things in wrestling that I use every day. And I know, like, if I need to get something done, that wrestling mindset is going to help me get it done. What do you use in your daily life?
So that's such a great question, because the most probably biggest change agent of my life, my wrestling coach, Dr. Gary Rushing, who we're still connected to this day, when I was 19 years old, I had failed my senior year in high school, didn't even place in the state tournament. I had failed the first year of college. I went to the U of M, and it was just a shitty year, a transitional year. And then I'm like, I'm not done yet. I know I have something in here. I get to the wrestling room, and we're practicing for about a month and a half. And the coach says, everybody write your goals, right? And I hated school. Like what was going on in my mind was way more exciting than what was going on in the front of the classroom. And the competition in my mind won all the time. I was always daydreaming. So anyway, I looked at this 3 pieces of paper. I'm like, oh, that sucks. I put them on my desk on Friday night, got really drunk, got drunk again Saturday. Sunday night, I had wrestling in the morning on Monday. So I'm like, oh, I better write my goals. And I started writing. And 2 hours later, I was a different human being. The next morning I showed up at wrestling, I was a different human being. And people used to say, you're working out so hard, you're wrestling so hard, you're doing this and that. I'm like, am I? I don't know. I have goals. And those goals became, like, I wrote that I wanted to be a 3-time All-American and national champ. And I handed the goals to the coach, and he says, he looks and he smiled, like the smirk. And I was a poker player. I knew what that meant. That meant he didn't believe me. And he said, these goals are kind of lofty, don't you think? And then he proceeded to tell me that, goals are really meant to, something you could try for. and I'm like, coach, it's too late. I've already done it in my head. And so I believed it. So 4 years later, I ended up being a 4-time All-American national champ because I had a compelling vision of the future. And that's what I have now. I have a vision of the future that I get up in the morning, I have my coffee, I do a little meditation, I come to the computer, and I work 16 hours a day, but I love every freaking minute of it, almost every minute of it. The parts I don't love, I am designing those parts out of my life. Like, I'm going to be 90% off of technology, other than podcasts and this kind of stuff I love. But like I'm going to be off of that by the end of the year. And I'm going to have those pieces worked with somebody who enjoys doing those pieces more than I do, right? And I'm going to design my life so I can inspire all day, every day, as much as possible.
And talking about that goal writing session, was there any particular light bulb moment in that instance, or was it just the act of really thinking about what you wanted from the sport and your career at college and putting pen to paper? And after that 2 hours, it just it had clicked. Was there anything in there other than just the act of writing it down and actually slowing down and thinking about it?
Yes, it was the questions, right? Affirmations are great, but they're not as powerful as questions, right? And if there's something negative, I turn it around and say, what's great about that? Like some of the stuff I learned from Tony Robbins, like what's great about that? What's awesome about that? And so I started asking the questions were on the page, like, what can you do here? What can you do here? And I started asking those questions and I started writing, and I started with little stuff. Okay, well, but then once the spark was lit, and then it became kind of an internal thing, then it just kept expanding and expanding and expanding. Like I was just connected to something bigger than my past illusory self at that moment.
And at that point, did you start embracing the academic side of it, or was there still more fun stuff going on in your head?
I didn't embrace academics until my first book I read, I believe when I fully read a book, I think I was 21 or 2 years old. The first time I ever read a book. And then I went bonkers. And then for 10 years, I read every book that somebody told me was a good book. You name it, I read it if it's one of the pillars, like one of the big ones. And then I got where my eyes got a little goofy, and now I listen to podcasts and YouTube videos. But yeah, the books were and it's funny because before that, I was like probably the lower 80 percentile or 75 percentile in reading, the lower in comprehension of words and stuff. And I just took these little online tests and stuff recently. And now my understanding of words is way higher. I'll just say that. And knowing words too is so profound because every word is a new concept. It's a new concept for reality. So I love learning and playing with these new words that are exposed through these readings and through these different types of great YouTube videos and so on.
Well, I think it's one of those things we were talking about, curriculum in schools and stuff like that. Everyone learns in their own ways, right? You might have not been able to sit in a classroom and get all that knowledge and literature and reading, but you're, doing it now way beyond school and still learning. So I think it's just one of those things we have to find ways to teach ourselves.
Absolutely. And open to new teachers. Yesterday, sitting in the jungle with the mushrooms, and the jungle was one of the most profound learnings of my life.
And speaking about sitting in the jungle yesterday with mushrooms, I think we've all seen the movie Vision Quest, right? And we talk about rites of passage, right, in the United States, and we really don't have them. And I never thought I had any till I had some heavy psychedelic experiences and realized growing up wrestling, the whole thing was a Vision Quest. Do you have a lot of that a lot of your roots and who you are as a person were kind of developed when you were an athlete?
So in other words, Vision Quest, like the experience of, what was that?
Like a rite of passage for a young man. I feel like wrestling kind of taught me a lot of things that I didn't know what I was going through or whatever, but kind of helped me develop as a human.
There's no doubt. I mean, so many different learnings. Like when you win, you party. When you lose, you ponder. It was always my losses that taught me the most, and I've been out there doing so much stuff for so long. I've had plenty of losses, but I wouldn't be here without them. So they're not really losses. They're just absolutely part of the Vision Quest, part of the learning. Like when that guy lost to Shoot or whatever, that was he lost in the match to that one guy, and then he beat Shoot at the end, right?
Yeah.
It's been a couple of decades since I've seen that awesome show. But that was his like raw, like he was like, I gotta go harder, right? So yeah, and here's my biggest learning is until kind of recently, it was about effort, it was about struggle, it was about pursuit and really trying hard. For the last maybe year, it's just about joy. I love what I do now, and I have fun at almost every level of it.
Yeah, I have a friend, and he has a Post-it note in his car that he sees every day, and it says, "Money flows from happiness."
I love it.
And that's just kind of his reminder of, he's a former Navy SEAL, but that's his kind of way of just, do the things that make you happy, do the things that stoke your bliss, and everything else is going to take care of itself.
So wise. I love that. In fact, on the computer screen, I have the word present written in 3 locations. reminding me to just look and breathe and just settle into what inspires me, and then take inspired action. Action taken out of fear is going to lead to destruction. Action taken out of the joy of connection with source is going to lead to beautiful things. One is sustainable, one is unsustainable. One is life, one is death.
Yeah. Actions always cure fear.
Yeah.
Talking before, it kind of popped in my head. Well, do you ever have to go to a store for food, or is everything you put in your body you grow?
So when we were in Costa Rica, we grew a lot of what we ate, and I still go to the store. I like chips, and now I'm learning to not eat too many of the damn things, because then I'll feel shitty. But I like pizza. Like, I like everything normal. I eat whatever. I don't ever eat foods with poisons. Nothing is not organic. Now, I don't trust organic anymore, unfortunately, because now the head of that whole thing was the head of Monsanto, which is just a complete criminal thing, like mind-bogglingly screwed up. So poisons are what I stay away from, and the family and everything. But as far as diversity of food, I do plan when I get to Galt's Landing, I want to have months, or at least a month, where every single thing I eat is from the property. And maybe that will be my own catalyst to never buy stuff again at the store. But for now, I still do buy, we still get quite a bit from the store.
Yeah, we're in full farmers market season here in Colorado. We've been taking full advantage of it, and there's nothing better than, feeding yourself off of a $15 bag of vegetables for the week and being like, man, I wish we could be doing this all the time, because this is so much better. And, I feel a little bit better the past 2 or 3 weeks, and I've gotten more color, different shades. And it's just like, oh man, this is where it's at. So, talking about food forest abundance, are you seeing people getting set up all around the country? Are there specific locations where, down in the South, where, maybe more year-round type of growing is taking place, or is it spreading?
So in the last 60 days, we have inspired people to have food forests in 10 countries and 35 states. It's going absolutely viral. And we've created a cooperative model to attract designers and food forest installers. And this is very similar. It's so reminiscent. I look back on my past and how I'm here now, and every dot connects so well, because the mortgage company, the processors were what I called the smart ones, right? I was more of a loan officer. I was out there hustling and meeting people and finding customers who wanted to get a loan. The processors knew how to take their information detail by detail and put it on paper, right? So it's a very similar process here. Is we've got a team of 15 professional food forest designers, and then we are doing cooperatives all over the world where we become the service mechanism. We become the marketing team. In fact, our internal mission at the mortgage company was to serve loan officers. Our internal mission here is to serve the cooperative, because they're the ones engaging with the customer and actually putting food in the ground. So we want to make their experience as good as possible. We take between 7 and 12% to pay our staff, and our staff, it's like getting a whole team of 6 people that are professionals in different areas, and then paying 7 to 12% of your business to that team, but yet it's still 100% your business. You own it 100%. In fact, there's one other thing that I want to share. I spent about $250,000 getting a franchise ready. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen the documents, but there's a thing called an FDD, a federal disclosure document, and an ops manual. Between the two documents, they were about 340 pages of bullshit. It was rules on how people would have to live their life if they were going to be part of this organization. I threw that shit away about a year ago. I said, this is just, it doesn't feel right. I threw it away. We now have a 2-page contract, and we are running our whole business on the voluntary exchange of value. We provide a shitload of value for the money that we get out of it. And we expect that the one thing we ask, and the only way to break the contract is one, if you want to, then go do your own thing, like whatever. There's no non-competes, there's no patents, there's none of that. Or if you treat our customers badly under our brand, then we can sever the contract. Those are the only two things. Otherwise, we do good work together, and we provide the foundation for thousands of cooperatives all around the world. And so if any of your listeners want to be in the business of helping people grow food, which is the most important business in the world right now, in my opinion, then join us.
Have you guys seen an uptick in the past year of people joining since everything kind of went down in 2020?
We launched 60 days ago, and we've got 120 designs all over the world. We're doing resorts in Thailand and Africa, and homes in Poland and France and Italy and all over, and then most of the states. And so it's exploding. It's the idea whose time has come. And here's the layers of stack. You know, have you ever heard of stacking functions? It's a permaculture principle, where when you take an element of a system and you combine functionality, like if you turn your roof into a water catchment system, you're stacking functions, because you've now got a roof that protects your house from the rain and the elements, and you've got a water catchment system. Now, if you put solar on top of that, you've got another functionality, right? So when somebody installs a food forest, they don't just get beauty. They don't just get their odds of cancer going down radically. How much is that worth to a lot of people? Their odds of diabetes, their odds of heart disease, the butterflies, the joy, the food and the taste and the food security, right? That's a massive stack of functions. But they also get, which if that was enough, would that be enough, right? But then they also get to become part of the supply chain. So this is one thing I like to share with everybody. If you have fruit trees and you prune your fruit trees, all right? Pruning is the act of going in and you cut off some branches to bring the light down to increase the yield of your fruit. Well, if you go out 10 weeks ahead of time and you cut a little circle around the base of the branch that you're going to prune, and you put a little gadget on there with soil, and now you go out 10 weeks later, and that takes 3 minutes. You cut that same branch, and now you've got a new fruit tree worth $30, right? So now you just spend 3 minutes. Now, if you've got a food forest, you can spend 3 or 4 hours doing that, and you can have $1,000 worth of new fruit trees, which is a stack of functions of financial function. And then you've got the function of helping your neighbors grow food.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I know in a place like New Jersey, where we're originally from, like if you have X amount of fruit bearing trees on your property, you get like farm subsidies and stuff and tax rebates and stuff, because you met that number, that criteria to be considered an orchard or a farm or whatever. So it just, there's all these little workarounds and things. And like you said, yeah, you've got this huge fruit tree. I'm getting fruit to eat off of, but now my neighbor's like wants to know one, and let me set one up for you. And you clip it, and you know, like you said, pass it off, whether you do it for free or you make some money off of it. You know, I could see going to a farmer's market with, you know, a couple, you know, branches that are now going to become trees, and there's another side business or a hustle for you as well. No, it's amazing. It's unbelievable. I mean, like I said, we walk around the city and we talk about all this stuff, and we have another podcast where it's like pop culture stuff where we do with our cousins. And one of the things that we've recently did was Zac Efron's Down to Earth.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're familiar with that, but they did the thing, and, you know, they went down to Costa Rica, and, you know, we've seen all these different things, and it's so awesome and amazing. But then to know how simple it is and see that a lot of that stuff doesn't get done here, it's almost a little depressing when you see that it's going by the wayside. And then that's where the Florida thing comes in, where it's like, yeah, we just want to get our tribe of 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 people, whatever it is, that we're all like-minded, and we're going to build this community. We're going to be self-sustaining. Like that's beautiful.
It's an opportunity. And I know what you mean by it's depressing until we flip that around and say, holy cow, look at that opportunity. I mean, I'm driving by all these houses that have these monster expenses, these liabilities called lawns. And I'm like, Jesus, This is the biggest opportunity for change in the history of humanity. And we have to do it, and we want to do it. So let's focus on the joy of doing it, and then inspire more, because people want to be around people that feel better than they do, right? That's just like, oh my God, I want some of that. So we keep focusing on the joy of it and the benefits of it, the health of it, and then it just brings the masses.
And when it comes to growing all this stuff, how do you guys do it and, not use chemicals? How do you still, prevent bugs from killing plants and stuff, but do it in an organic, natural way?
That's a great question. These are questions that most people don't, they want to know the answers to. So thank you. When you design a system that mimics natural processes, you want bugs. The monocultures are what create plagues. But when you have 2 apple trees, 2 pear, 2 plum, several cherry, and then all the different lemongrass and different herbs and all the different stuff together, then you don't get an overabundance of one bug. And the other thing is, like, this idea of killing wasps, you got the wasp spray, the poisonous stuff. Wasps and spiders and lizards are your garden's best friend, right? Like these plants, if there's a certain beetle or larvae eating a plant, the plant will send out a distress signal that the wasp flying overhead can see the pink hue or the vibration. And they'll be like, oh, there's lunch. The wasp will fly down, look for the larva, eat the larva, and save the plant, right? So it's about balance in a natural system.
Yeah. So it's kind of like when, you see someone sees a spider in the house and girlfriend, wife, or whatever, screaming and yelling about, get it, get it, get it. And you're like, no, just it eats other bugs. Like, it's not necessarily a bad thing, you just kind of let it be. And we definitely don't need to kill it. At the very least, let's take it outside. But maybe having it inside isn't a bad thing. It's kind of like having a cat. You're not going to have any mice.
Right. And if it's a brown recluse or a black widow, I'm sorry, but you're dead, right? And it's not because I like killing them, it's because I got little kids and I don't want that. But that's the thing, is understanding which spiders are completely beneficial and which spiders can do major harm, right? And so it's the understanding that needs to be part of our system of education from the family up, not from the school system. We can never count on that. We have to count on it from our own inspired. Why do we want to teach our kids this? Because having a big spider web at the front door is like the best way to get mosquitoes from not coming in the house. Like all these different things. It's just about having the balance and the understanding that it's balance that creates a healthy society. And we're on our way. The tide, I believe, is turning. I think there's a lot of people that aren't going to make it because they're going to stay in the control grid with fear and shame and rage being their MO. But I'm inspired to help raise as many people out of that as I can, just by demonstrating that it's just more fun to be happy.
Yeah, it's a way better way to live, for sure. So one more thing with this, with the forest, the abundance, if I were to contact you, I want to get my property set up. Do you have a set plan in terms of what you're planning, or do you kind of work with the individual in terms of maybe what they want or what works best for their region or their location? Seasonally, some obviously like Florida and stuff, it's a little bit different than here in Colorado where we have to deal with winter a little bit. Like, is that like a team thing where you work with the individual, or do you have like a set plan depending on the regions and those locations?
Great question. We do have people in Colorado and Oregon and Washington and New York, all over, and every zone, even Minnesota. I've got friends in northern Minnesota and Canada that have thriving food forests. My mom grew up on a farm in southern Minnesota with an outhouse, no electric, no running water, and they grew all their own food, right? And that was before she even knew about permaculture or any of that. That was mostly annuals and then their monocultures. But so here's the process. somebody says, I'm inspired to grow food instead of a lawn, or I want a food forest, then they reach out to us and we have a custom food forest blueprint. That is an incredible document, and it layers the exact types of plants and perennials and the layers of soil, the soil amendments. Basically, it's a blueprint that can either be DIY'd or we can help the install process. I was just talking to another podcaster named Luke, great guy. He just talked to a gal who wants to charge him $3,000 for a simple suburban yard kind of design, and that's about normal. Our design is $797. We are about volume. We are about, let's change the world. And so our price is set to match. Now, if it's a larger property or if it's acreage, then of course it's more. But for a standard backyard food forest blueprint, it's $797. And then the first thing that we do is send a questionnaire. That's the most important component or element. And the questionnaire will ask, what fruits do you like? What don't you like? What is your goals? Do you want to have annuals, perennials? Do you want to have a mixture? And I strongly suggest a mixture because of the short-term food supply issues. Like within the next 6 months, the whole world's going to understand that there's a food supply problem. So then we get pictures and videos of the space. Then we get a survey or measurements, and then we Google Earth it. And then it goes to our head designer, Dr. Ian Scott, and then he gets it to one of our design team that's right for that zone.
Is he a landscape architect?
He's a food forest connoisseur. His backyard is absolutely loaded.
Yeah.
Like it's got everything. It's just a beautiful thing to see.
I was just going to ask, is there anything about the food forest that we haven't touched on that, inquiring people might have questions about, or the common questions that you have to answer on the regular that we haven't touched on that you might want to speak about now?
Just real quick, the main questions are around how hard is it? What do I have to know? You don't have to know anything. We ask people, especially at the beginning, to go out and just observe their food forest. Go out every 2 or 3 days. If it's a drought, then water the root ball. Like, be conscious. Just look at these plants, which will also raise your vibration, raise your energy, and make you feel good. So it's kind of a multifunctional task. The other thing is the cost. This can be done DIY, where you'll save about 40 or 50%, or we can install it for you. It's similar price to landscaping. Our average job is a little over 10,000. And of that, we do a standard business model where it's usually about 60% in labor and materials and 40% in business margin. So on a $10,000 install, the food forest cooperative owner will have a net margin of 40% plus their labor, and then we take 7 to 12%. So it's a stack of function. It's regenerative capitalism on every level.
Excellent. Jim, we really appreciate your time. It's been an honor and a pleasure having you on. We do have a couple of rapid fire questions. If you got a couple more seconds, they're not necessarily rapid fire and answers, but these are like our standard 4 or 5 posts or end of the episode. We ask all of our guests. Some of them you've kind of touched on a little bit, but we're going to go a little bit deeper in there.
So I know you said you're a coffee drinker. How do you brew your coffee, and how do you take your coffee?
Oh gosh, I should go get my sock. I've got a Costa Rican coffee brewer. I use this organic coffee and I put it in this, it looks like an old dirty sock, and I pour hot water over it. And I love my coffee, man. Right there. Yeah, and I organic all the way, because other stuff is pure poison.
You go straight black?
Yeah. And now I add honey. And I add butter sometimes, like, what's that called with that guy, the bulletproof version? Yeah. I kind of do that, just my own way.
Yeah, I skip out on the oil part of that, and I'll tend to put in a little bit of goat butter with some oat milk, and that the oil the oil and the coffee is not a good combination for me usually on most days. So
you got it.
But I do all right with the butter. You mentioned getting up in the morning, doing a little bit of meditation and stuff. other than that, do you have any other sort of daily practices or rituals that you do on a regular basis to level up and show up as the strongest version of yourself?
I'm crazy about sport. I love playing games. I'm hooked on tennis now. 4 years ago, I started. I'm just nuts about it. I run around like a 20-year-old, and it's just, I don't know where I'd be without it. It's a lot of fun.
You ever play pickleball?
I've played it twice, and I love it as well.
We have
You like it?
I've never played, but we have a couple of friends / guests that have come on, and the one gentleman is a comedian, and he always says that after he says pickleball, he says it's the fastest growing sport in America.
I think it might be. It's fun.
Jim, what are you listening to right now? Music, podcast wise, audio books? Are you reading anything?
Dr. Joe Dispenza, Abraham Hicks, Alan Watts, Sadhguru. I mean, I was mushrooms on the, way in the car with I was listening to Sadhguru and these guys, and I'm thinking, oh my God, they're just completely connected to source. And then several others along those lines about raising the vibration and really just feeling what's next, not forcing, not planning out the future. Like in that, I know what our intention is. We're going to change the world. We're going to inspire the masses and catalyze a shift and help many other people doing it, right? That's our job, is to shine a light on the people that are doing it. So what I have to do is I have to be the best me I can be to fit the identity and the role that allows that to happen.
Excellent. And last but certainly not least, this used to be a lot more lighthearted question before March of 2020. It's taken a little bit different turn since then, but I know you're on our side with all this, and you already mentioned it. Do you have a favorite conspiracy theory? Is there any one particular one that you find yourself late night researching? Have you had an alien encounter? With growing up in Minnesota, was Bigfoot a thing back then?
I love that. I've had one encounter with something I don't understand, which was just incredible. And I wish I didn't experience fear while I was having it, because the fear, I think, stopped me from understanding or looking at it from a clear lens. I was living in Hawaii at the time. 9/11, Building 7 is just a freaking no-brainer. Like, God damn it. How does a building fall in its own footprint at free fall speed? Like, the plane didn't even hit that building. Most people don't even know that Building 7 existed, and that was the third biggest building in history to fall ever, just like that. So that one, if you're kind of curious about 9/11 or just about conspiracies in general, that's the biggest smoking gun. There's a couple real quick. This idea that this well-known figure, who I've said his name 1,000 times, but to respect your show, I'm not going to say his name. His dad was the head of Planned Parenthood, who volunteered to kill 50 million babies, or to help in the oversight of the death of 50 million babies. They're about eugenics. They're very openly about this. So if you don't believe this, but if that's the only question you ask yourself, that's kind of a coincidence. No, it's not.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that particular individual, because we had a professor who was quite the skeptic, and I brought up that same topic, and his response was, well, Planned Parenthood didn't kill those babies, the doctors did.
The levels of cognitive dissonance are really kind of shocking.
Yeah. Thank you,
Awesome.
sir.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your message, and keep on keeping on, brother.
Guys, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for everything you're doing.
Thanks, Jim. Have a great night.
All right.
Appreciate you.
Ciao.